Hey Joe is an American popular song from the 1960s that has become a rock standard and as such has been performed in many musical styles by hundreds of different artists. Hey Joe tells the story of a man who is on the run and planning to head to Mexico after shooting his unfaithful wife. However, diverse credits and claims have led to confusion as to the song's true authorship and genesis. The earliest known commercial recording of the song is the late 1965 single by the Los Angeles garage band The Leaves. The band then re-recorded the track and released it in 1966 as a follow-up single which became a hit. Currently, the best-known version is the Jimi Hendrix Experience's 1966 recording, their debut single. The song title is sometimes given as Hey Joe, Where You Gonna Go? Or similar variations. Authorship, while claimed by the late Tim Rose to be a traditional song, or often erroneously attributed to the pen of American musician Dino Valenti, Hey Joe was registered for copyright in the US in 1962 by Billy Roberts. Scottish folk singer Len Partridge has claimed that he helped write the song with Roberts when they both performed in clubs in Edinburgh in 1956. Other sources claim that Roberts assigned the rights to the song to his friend Valenti while Valenti was in jail, in order to give him some income upon release. Roberts was a relatively obscure California-based folk singer, guitarist and harmonica player who performed on the West Coast coffeehouse circuit. He later recorded the country rock album Thoughts of California with the band Grits in San Francisco in 1975, produced by Hillel Resner. Resner has stated that a live recording of Roberts performing Hey Joe exists, dating from around 1961. Roberts possibly drew inspiration for Hey Joe from three earlier works, his girlfriend Naila Miller's 1955 song Baby, Please Don't a unregistered trademark T Go to Town. Carl Smith's 1953 U.S. country hit Hey Joe, which shared the title and the questioning format. And the early 20th century traditional ballad Little Sadie, which tells of a man on the run after he has shot his wife. The lyrics to Little Sadie often locate the events in the Massville, North Carolina, and down in Jericho, South Carolina. Roberts was himself born in South Carolina. Variations of Little Sadie have been recorded under various titles by many artists, including Clarence Ashley, Johnny Cash, Slim Dusty, and Bob Dylan. Some versions change the southbound location from Jericho to Mexico. Despite extensive archives of U.S. folk and blues music, and studies of the same, in the Library of Congress, the Smithsonian Institution, and other bodies, no documentary evidence has been provided to support the claim, by Tim Rose and others, that Hey Joe is a wholly traditional work. Rights to the song were administered from 1966 into the 2000s by the music publisher Third Story Music. There the author is listed as Billy Roberts. Early recordings. Roberts' song gained fans in the Los Angeles music scene of the mid-1960s, which led to fast-paced recordings in 1965 and 1966 by The Leaves, The Standalls, The Safaris, Love, The Music Machine, and The Byrds, swiftly making the song a garage rock classic. Both Dino Valenti and the Byrds' David Crosby have been reported as helping to popularize the song before it was recorded by The Leaves in December 1965. The Leaves, who had been introduced to the song while attending live concerts by the Byrds at Ciro's on Sunset Boulevard, recorded and released three versions of Hey Joe between 1965 and 1966. Their first version was released in November-December 1965 but sold poorly. The band's third recorded version of the song became a hit in May-June 1966, reaching number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and number 29 on the Canadian RPM magazine charts. The Leaves version is notable for being the only recording of the song to reach the top 40 of the Billboard chart. The Safaris recording of the song, released on the B-side of their So Get Out single, is sometimes cited as being the first rock recording of the song, but a number of reliable sources contend that, in fact, the Safaris version dates from 1966, well after the Leaves' original 1965 version. There is some dispute over exactly when the Safaris recording of the song was released. Some sources list its release date as being late 1965, but there are many other sources that list it as being June 1966. However, The catalog number of the Safaris single is Decca 31954, which when cross-referenced with other contemporaneous Decca single releases, allows the single to be conclusively dated to a May-June 1966 timeframe. A June 1966 release date is further corroborated by the discographical information on Gary Usher's website. Usher was the producer of the Safaris recording of the song, and the discographical information on his website comes from the late producer's personal archives, as compiled by his biographer Stephen J. McParland at the request of the Usher family. The Standalls recorded a version of the song, titled Hey Joe, Where You Gonna Go?, which was included on their 1966 Dirty Water album. The garage rock band, The Music Machine, recorded a slow, moody, fuzz-laden version of the song in late 1966 which bears a strong resemblance to Jimi Hendrix's later version. The Los Angeles band Love included a version of Hey Joe on their debut album, Love, recorded in January 1966 and released on Elektra Records in April. The song was brought to the band by guitarist and singer, Brian McLean, who had been introduced to the song by David Crosby during 1965, while McLean had been a roadie for the Byrds. The band's lead vocalist, Arthur Lee, claimed in later years that it was Love's version that turned Jimi Hendrix onto the song as well as most of the other Los Angeles acts who covered the song. Love's recording of Hey Joe features slightly different lyrics to most versions of the song. For example, the lyric "Gun in your hand became money in your hand" in Love's version. The Byrds' recording of the song also features the same altered lyrics as Love's version. Love guitarist Johnny Eccles claims that Love's and the Byrds' lyrics are the authentic ones. According to Eccles, the Leaves had heard Love performing the song and asked them for the lyrics. He rewrote them to play the Leaves a dirty trick, accidentally authoring the version that everybody got to know. The Byrds included a recording of the song, titled Hey Joe, on their 1966 album, Fifth Dimension. The lead vocalist on the Byrds version was David Crosby, who was instrumental in bringing the song to the group and in popularizing the song within the larger LA music community. Crosby had wanted to record the song almost since the band first formed in 1964, but the other members of the Byrds had been unenthusiastic toward the song. By the time of the recording sessions for Fifth Dimension, several other bands had enjoyed success with covers of Hey Joe, leaving Crosby angered by his bandmates' lack of faith in the song. Byrds guitarist and band leader Roger McGuinn recalled in an interview that the reason Crosby did lead on Hey Joe was because it was his song. He didn't write it, but he was responsible for finding it. He'd wanted to do it for years, but we would never let him. Then both Love and the Leaves had a minor hit with it, and David got so angry that we had to let him do it. General consensus within the band and among critics was that the Byrds version wasn't an entirely successful reading of the song and was inferior to previous recordings of the song by Love and the Leaves. In later years, both McGuinn and the band's manager, Jim Dixon, criticized Crosby's vocal performance on the song for not being powerful enough to carry the aggressive subject matter and expressed regret that the song had been included on Fifth Dimension. Even Crosby himself later admitted that the recording of the song was an error on his part, stating it was a mistake, "I shouldn't have done it. Everybody makes mistakes." The song would go on to become a staple of the Byrds' live concert repertoire during 1966 and 1967. The band also included the song in their performance at the Monterey Pop Festival, which is included on the 2002 The Complete Monterey Pop Festival DVD box set as well as on the 1992 The Monterey International Pop Festival CD box set. Tim Rose and Jimi Hendrix, folk rock singer Tim Rose unregistered trademark slower version of the song inspired the first single by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. The ex-bassist for the Animals, Charles Chandler, who was now focusing on managing other acts, had also seen Rose performing the song at the Café Ha in New York City and was looking for an artist to record a rock version of Hey Joe. Chandler discovered Jimi Hendrix, who had also been playing at the Café Ha in 1966 and performing an arrangement of Hey Joe inspired by Rose's rendition. Chandler decided to take Hendrix with him to England in September 1966, where he would subsequently turn the guitarist into a star. Tim Rose re-recorded Hey Joe in the 1990s, retitling it Blue Steel .44, and again claimed the song as his own arrangement of a traditional song. Some accounts credit the slower version of the song by the British band The Creation as being the inspiration for Hendrix's version. Chandler and Hendrix saw them perform the song after Jimi arrived in the UK, although The Creation's version was not released until after Hendrix's. It is unclear if the members of The Creation had heard Tim Rose's version. Released in December 1966, Hendrix's version became a hit in the United Kingdom, entering the top 10 of the UK singles chart in January 1967 and peaking at number 6. The single was released in the United States on May 1, 1967 with the B-side 51st Anniversary, but failed to chart. Hey Joe, as recorded by the Jimi Hendrix Experience, with backing vocals by the Breakaways, remains the best-known version of the song and is listed as number 201 on Rolling Stone magazine's The 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. In 2009 it was named the 22nd greatest hard rock song of all time by VH1. Hey Joe was the last song Jimi Hendrix performed at the Woodstock Festival in 1969 and as such, it was also the final song of the whole festival. The song was performed after the crowd, comprising the 80,000 who hadn't yet left the festival, cheered for an encore. Later recordings, Cher recorded a version of Hey Joe in 1967 on her album With Love, copyright R. Deep Purple included the song as the eighth and final track on their 1968 debut album, Shades of Deep Purple, and initially listed their own band members as the songwriters. Deep Purple's arrangement of the song includes elements of classical music, including parts from The Miller's Dance, Suite No. 2, Part 2 of El Sombrero de Tus Picos Ballet by Manuel de Falla, on a rhythm reminiscent of the Bowler copyright Rue by Maurice Ravel. Marmalade recorded a version of the song in 1968 because they needed a B-side to their single Lovin' Things in a Hurry, and because they thought it was a traditional song and as such, the band would get the songwriting royalties from it. Marmalade guitarist Junior Campbell stated in an interview that Jimi Hendrix's version had already sold about 200,000 copies and then we sold about 300,000 on the flip of Lovin' Thing. But then the following year, the bloke who'd written the bloody song suddenly turned up out of the woodwork. Frank Zappa recorded a parody of the song, titled Flower Punk, on the Mothers of Invention album We're Only in It for the Money in 1968. The song was one of several on the album that parodied the fashionable hippie lifestyle. Lyrics in Zappa's version included Hey Punk, where you goin' with that flower in your hand? / well, I'm going up to Frisco to join a psychedelic band. Zappa also included the opening chord riff of Hey Joe in the song Honey, Don't You Want a Man Like Me? From his Zappa in New York album. Patti Smith released a cover of the song as the A-side of her first single, Hey Joe BW Piss Factory, in 1974. The arrangement of Smith's version is based on a recording by blues guitarist Roy Buchanan that was released the previous year. Smith's version is unique in that she includes a brief and salacious monologue about fugitive heiress Patty Hearst and her kidnapping and participation with the Symbionese Liberation Army. Smith's version portrays Patty Hearst as Joe with a gun in her hand. Sonic Youth's song Hey Joni, included on their 1988 album, Daydream Nation, is titled in reference to Hey Joe, and to Joni Mitchell, but it shares no lyrical themes with the Billy Roberts song. The rock band The Who occasionally performed Hey Joe during their 1989 tour. Their version was influenced by Jimi Hendrix's arrangement and was dedicated to him. Willie DeVille recorded a charanga version of the song that was a hit in Europe in 1992, going to number 1 in Spain. The song was released as a single in Europe and appeared on DeVille's Backstreets of Desire album. Typo Negative retitled the song as Hey Pete on their 1992 The Origin of the Feces album and changed the song's protagonist to an axe murderer. This fit the song into a story arc spanning several of the band's own compositions. The Red Hot Chili Peppers was seen in 2006 rehearsing the song on the TV program Live from Abbey Road on Channel 4. 1,572 guitarists played Hey Joe simultaneously in the town square of Wrocław, Poland on May 1, 2006, breaking a Guinness record. A new record was set when 1,881 guitarists played Hey Joe and Ricare on May 1, 2007. Then on May 1, 2008, 1,951 guitarists played Hey Joe and Ricare to set a new world record. The record was further broken in Ricare on May 1, 2009, when 6,346 guitarists played the song in the same venue. A new record was set on May 1, 2012, when 7,273 guitarists turned out in Ricare. Selected list of recorded versions. The following versions of Hey Joe made the pop charts in the US or UK: The Leaves as Hey Joe, Where You Gonna Go? Re-recorded as Hey Joe, Where You Gonna Go, and then again as Hey Joe. This last version charted, peaking at number 31 in the US. The Jimi Hendrix Experience peaked at UK number 6. In 2000, Total Guitar magazine ranked it as the 13th greatest cover version of all time. Cher on her album With Love, Cher peaked at US number 94. Allmusic wrote a mixed review by calling it tough, and not so spectacular, and also clearly the wrong material for this great singer. Wilson Pickett peaked at number 29 on the US R&B charts, number 59 on the US pop charts, number 42 on the Canadian RPM magazine charts, and number 16 on the UK charts. Featured Duane Allman on guitar. Other recorded versions of Hey Joe include, The Safaris as Hey Joe, Where Are You Going?, Love on their album Love, The Byrds on their album Fifth Dimension, The Standalls on their album Dirty Water as Hey Joe, Where You Gonna Go? The Music Machine on their album The Music Machine, The Shadows of Night on their album Backdoor Men, Warlocks, The Swamp Rats as Hey Joe. Tim Rose, The Cryin' Shames on their album Sugar and Spice, Otis Taylor on the album Blue-Eyed Monster, with slightly different lyrics, and again on recapturing the banjo, and Hey Joe Opus Red Meat, Gone, The Soul Benders on their album Can't Believe in Love. The Still Ravens scored a Midwest U.S. regional hit in early 1967 with their cover version, The Hazards on the compilation CD Aliens, Psychos and Wild Things, Volume 2, The Guess Who? On the bootleg album Live in Winnipeg, Johnny Hallyday French lyrics by Gilles Thibault. On the album Olympia 67, Marta Squared Italian lyrics by Francesco Guccini, Los Locos Mexican lyrics by Rafael Acosta. On the EP Negro is Negro, The Ant Trip Ceremony on their album 24 Hours, Deep Purple on their album Shades of Deep Purple, The Golden Cups Japanese group, The Creation, Marmalade, The Mothers of Invention parodied Hey Joe, and took a satirical swipe at hippies in their song Flower Punk from We're Only In It for the Money. Johnny Rivers on the album Realization. Band of Joy demo version with Robert Plant issued in 2003 on the album 66 to Timbuktu. The Arbors on the album The Arbors, featuring I Can't Quit Her / The Letter. King Curtis on the album Instant Groove. Seiko UK single, Fever Tree on For Sale. Lee Moses on the album Time and Place. The Les Humphreys Singers on the album We'll Fly You to the Promised Land. Carson on the album On the Air. Sirius on the album Sirius Anna Live. Roy Buchanan on the album That's What I'm Here For. Patti Smith Her first music single. Spirit on the album Spirit of 76. Alvin Lee on the album Ride On. Hobo Blues Band on the album Car Paragraphs Are copyright per a Cubed Pie Hobo Blues. Baldoa 3/4 are on their live album Ako Ste Slobodni Vieras. More as the B-side of their single Trickster. Soft Soul as part of the B-side Hendrix medley, later reissued on The Art of Falling Apart. Weird Al Yankovic as part of the medley Polkas on 45 on the album Weird Al Yankovic in 3D. Nash the Slash on the album American Bandages. Alan Bashung covered the Johnny Hallyday version of the song on the album Live Tour 85. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds on the album Kicking Against the Pricks. Dead Moon on the album In the Graveyard. Francesco Di Giacomo on the album Non Metterla di Nel Naso in duet with Sam Moore. Rambo Amadeus on the album Hoemo Guslazaovic Sam. Angstrom 3/4 Eno. Black Uru on the album Now. Seal on the Killer single. Later included on the Set It Off soundtrack album. The Offspring on their Baghdad EP and, in a different version, as a B-side on their Gone Away single. Willie DeVille on the album Backstreets of Desire. Typo Negative as Hey Pete on the album The Origin of the Feces. Jerry Douglas on the album Slide Rule. Vocals by Tim O'Brien, Buckwheat Zydeco on the album On Track, Roy Buchanan on the album The Best of Roy Buchanan, Body Count on the albums Born Dead and Stone Free, a tribute to Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Murphy on the album Love's Alright, Captain Sensible on his Live album Live at the Milky Way, Matilda Santinger's Hey Joan, Where the Woman Shoots a Man, Lick the Tins on the album Blind Man on a Flying Horse. Brazilian Bano rapper recorded a Portuguese version on the album Rapper Mundi, with considerably different lyrics and plot. 15 on the EP There's No Place Like Home, Guitar Shorty on the album Billie Jean Blues. Guitar Shorty is Jimi Hendrix's brother-in-law. The Makeup on the album Save Yourself, Axel Rudy Bell on the album The Ballads 2, Held Schneider on the album Risa Latin Rock, Medsky Martin and Wood on the album Tonic, Franco Battiato on the album Ferro Battuto, Robert Plant on the album Dreamland and also earlier with a Band of Joy in 1967, Vijaya on the album Blood Sutra, Bramchuk on his album Local Angel, Gabby Dixon Band on Live at World Cafe, Cassie Steele on How Much for Happy, Mage Kfashk on the album Rainmaker, Big B on the album Big B Presents. Random Stuff, Arkaleo Galia Lithuanian version called E, Duozai on their debut album. Bap Kennedy on Howl On, Brown Sugar as an extra on the cassette release of their Deportation EP, Josh Charles on the album Trip in the Keys, music of Jimi Hendrix, Israel Nash Gripka on the album Working Class Hero and Other Favorites, Brad Mehldal Trio on the album Where Do You Start, Pondon Nuggets, Antipodean interpolations of the first psychedelic era, Charlotte Gainsbourg and Lars von Trier's film Nymphomaniac, the Free Beer Band and Live at Joestock. In popular culture, the Jimi Hendrix Experience's rendition of Hey Joe appears in the following films: Forrest Gump, Empire Records, Wayne's World 2, Death Sentence, When Billy Come to Bones Body Shop, Reaper, Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay, Crooklyn. Hey Joe as performed by the Jimi Hendrix Experience also appears in the Deep Space Nine episode Past Tense. A version sung by Michael Pitt with the band The Twins of Evil features in the film The Dreamers. The Roger Waters song Folded Flags from the soundtrack to the film, When the Wind Blows, features a reference to Hey Joe in the lines Hey Joe, where you goin' with that gun in your hand? And Hey Joe, where you goin' with that dogma in your head? Samples and quotes. Linkin Park's Mike Shinoda sampled Hendrix's version for his Jimi remix of the Styles of Beyond song Bleach, which appeared on Fort Minor's We Major mixed app. Rapper Fat Joe used the lines, Hey Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand in his song Joey Don't Do It from his 2009 album Jealous One Still Envy 2. The professional wrestling stable, known as the B-Team NO, made use of several Hendrix samples, including a small section of Hey Joe, in their entrance music. References. Sources: 60s Rock, Michael Hicks, University of Illinois Press, 2000, Original Seeds Volume 2, Songs That Inspired Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Kim Basile, CD liner notes, Rubber Records Australia, 2004. External links: a comprehensive list of versions of Hey Joe, full lyrics of this song at Metro Lyrics.